Hi, welcome to this puppy caricature. If you're wanting to learn to caricature, then you're someone special. It means that you like to have fun, or you want to learn to have more fun and share the fun of creative caricature expression with others. Caricature is not about insulting people by distorting their features. It's a way of enjoyment. I've bought books on caricature that I didn't learn anything from. I bought lessons which were advertised on YouTube that I learnt nothing from. Where I did learn a great deal about caricature was, well, as a child, drawing dogs and children just for the fun of it, not when I was a professional artist. Before I became a professional artist, that's when I just painted and drew for the sheer love of it. And then, must be 20 years ago, I actually won it was $400 a day session with a famous caricature artist who did his work in one of the major newspapers at the time, and I went there and had a day session with him, and that was a wonderful experience, and I gained a great deal from that. I've never really had the chance to develop my caricature until now. I've retired from selling my artwork, and I've been a professional artist for, well, 65 years really, and I sold in galleries, my own gallery, tours around Australia and even overseas selling art. There was very little time for caricature. A little bit done in my sketchbook occasionally, just for fun, or creating birthday cards, greeting cards for family, and that's where I kept my hand in with it, but I never did it professionally. So now I'm wanting to do a caricature a day. I've got Tessa, my lovely little puppy, and she's a huge inspiration, and there'll be a lot of senior citizens here in the aged care home where I am, where I take Tessa for meet and greet and a bit of therapy training. So much wonderful material for caricature, and I want to share it with you and how I create it. So let's get on with it. When you set out to learn caricature, you end up becoming a very good all-round artist, because you really have to develop your powers of observation and often quick sketching. It's a tremendous experience for the artist. A lot of people won't appreciate the work that goes into caricature. In many ways it's harder than doing a realist drawing, because of you're after an emotion, you're after the humour, you're capturing a personality, you're after so much more than just the line drawing. The more you sketch, the more you practice it, of course, the better you're going to be. Now, one of the things you've got to do is to try to not make it a realist sketch. And the easiest way to do that is to not do a continuous line, have a broken line, a wiggly line. If you're trying to develop that wiggly line, hold your pen that you're working with, or pencil or brush, at the very end of it, not down near the point where you're writing or painting. When you grasp your pen or brush or pencil near the area that's going on the paper, you will have far more control. If you hold it far away near the tip at the far end, you've got less control and you're more likely to get a wiggly line. You can also practice working on a less secure surface. That's why there's one part of this video where you'll see that the painting's actually wobbling. I'm after getting that unsteady, irregular line that's typical of a caricature. You don't want to be too refined. Also, you don't have to do a continual line. You can do little suggestions of the line, just enough to show the edges but not have a continual edge. I've also simplified my colour scheme. I've worked with yellow ochre, raw sienna, Venetian red. I've worked with Payne's grey. I've tried to control the amount of colour. You could put a splash of bright blue or bright red into it for a tongue or a collar. These are fun to do, or even a bit of wildflower in a grass, but for the actual dogs that I'm painting, simplicity. Also remember to leave a lot of white. You don't want to completely fill it in. You're not trying to do a finished painting or a finished drawing. Again, what you're after is an expression of emotion. You're after the fun. You're not after the refined, finished drawing. And yes, that actually takes a lot more skill to do than trying to do the complete finished work. Practice will help you. Because you're not going to put every line in or every bit of colour in, you're trying to simplify, you're going to just try to put the most important parts in. So squint your eyes when you look at the subject and you're looking for that pattern of light and shade, and just try to capture the main things that are going to give the impression of what that subject looked like. So training for fine art impressionist painting, that will help you too. Everything you do, whether it be practicing your drawing skills, practicing impressionist painting, they're all going to help you with your caricature. The main thing is not overdoing it, not over detailing it. Now, it's one type of art that you can get into at an inexpensive cost, where fine art might be costly to get your good quality materials. You can do your caricature with very little cost. You could outline the subject with a black pencil. It doesn't need to be ink and a pen. I use a fountain pen, and I'd use a quality one. I'm using a Lamy 2000, but you could easily do this with a dip pen. I did all my original artwork as a child with dip pens. I used fountain pens only as I matured. I love the fountain pens because I have quality ones. I have gold nib ones. Now, the starting price for most gold nibbed new fountain pens will be around $300 Australian, but you can actually pick up some very good vintage ones from $30. $70 is a popular price that I tend to pay for good quality gold nibbed vintage fountain pens from reliable sellers that are selling well preserved or refurbished pens. So it's not that hard to get into the quality fountain pen market, but a good dip pen will do just as well. You can also get food. A food nib is a nib that is fine if you work on the back of it, or thick if you're working on the front of it, and I've seen those new from around $30. So your pen doesn't need to be expensive. If you are not using a fountain pen, you can use an Indian ink, which is what I used when I was young, when I used the dip pens. It's a good black. If you're using a fountain pen, make sure you're using a fountain pen friendly ink. If you're wanting to do an outline that won't smudge or run or bleed when you add your water, then you need to use a permanent ink. There's a number of different brands. I tend to use a tremendous permanent document ink. Now, where I wouldn't cut back on cost is on paper. If you buy a good quality drawing paper, if you're not using wet mediums, you can do colouring pencils and just use a quality paper that doesn't take water. Or if you're using water-based inks or watercolours, then I'd suggest getting a watercolour paper. If you do a lot of pen work, you might prefer a hot pressed, which is a smooth paper. I do a lot of watercolour work and I prefer a little bit of texture, so I tend to use a rougher surface, a cold press, which gives me a rougher surface watercolour paper. Most pen and ink people like the smooth paper, because I went to pen and ink after I was a watercolourist. I'll prefer the textured paper. It's just a matter of preference. There's not a right or a wrong to it. But the heavier the paper, the less likely your paper is to warp and it'll just much more pleasing to work on. I'm working to a size that will fit in a A5 journal. These will be going into my art journal. Many of them will be made into gift cards. These two I'm giving to my husband. They're just wonderful too for creating prints. You'll find your caricature prints are very popular as stickers and gift cards. Felt tip pens are very popular for doing caricature. You also might want to use one of the white pens, or I use gouache, which is opaque watercolour. It comes in a tube, and that's great if you want to fix something up. But it is best if you can just simply leave the paper as your white, but many of us decide we want a little bit of white afterwards, or you might want to put white whiskers on, and it's good to have an opaque white. I have used the white pencil pens in this particular demonstration, and I did not like the effect. I far prefer using gouache. I also have a tendency to use those pens so rarely that when I go to pick them up, they've dried out. So the tube of gouache is far more successful for me. Again, it's a matter of preference. Experiment and find out what works for you. Now, if I'm sketching very lightly, I like to use a 2H pencil to do a very light, barely visible sketch. I've used a blue pencil to sketch this out because it shows up very well. Also, if you're creating a video and you don't want people to see your initial sketch, then sketch it in a pale blue or a green pencil, and then you can go into your editing program and tell it to remove the blue or the green, and people will think you're fantastic. They won't be able to see the sketch underneath. They'll think you're just going straight in with the permanent ink. No, I never go straight in with my permanent ink. I'm using quality paper. I don't want to spoil it. We all make boo-boos. I much prefer to have a few structure lines. I do my sketching initially with the pencil that will rub out. And when I'm happy with my sketch, then I go in with my permanent ink. And I think most artists do that whether they tell you they do or not. It's just that these editing programs can remove the pencil line if you use colour. Other tools you will want will be a craft knife, which is very good for scratching out lines if you want white lines by scraping out the underpainting. You need perhaps a kneadable eraser if you want to lift highlights out, an art gum rubber, or even fresh white bread if you don't have it will be a good remover of normal pencil lines, and a good pencil sharpener is worth it. You'll find that you can get some high quality ones that will give you a fine tip point or a soft point. So I tend to have a really good one that will give me 2 different width points. If you are doing watercolour, better to have 1 good brush than 4 crappy brushes, honestly. I have the Winsor & Newton Series 7 number 7. And that's what I'm working with now for this. Now, you don't have to go to quite that cost, but yes, quality will make it easier. But because it's caricature, you can get away with your student grade brushes, synthetic brushes, and student grade paint if you wish, because it's not quite so important that you have the beautiful transparency of a really high quality watercolour for this type of work. But if you've got the quality materials, you'll enjoy using them. The next essential bits of equipment for caricature is your mental attitude. Oh my gosh, do you ever have to have an I can attitude to do this? You mustn't be afraid. There's going to be some point of the painting you're probably going to hate it and think you've lost it. Just persevere. You've got to have some flair. You've got to have a lot of courage. the way I'm tackling it is I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to do a caricature every day. If you grab that pen or your pencil or your brush or however you plan to start, and just make a commitment that you are going to do it every day. Let's say you just commit yourself to 20 minutes. Each of these little caricatures, there's 2 of them here that I'm working on. They've taken me about 15 minutes each. So big deal if I promise for 15 minutes I am going to look at something and caricature it. You can find 15 minutes in your day. And believe me, if you did one of these every day, by the time you've done 1,000 of them, you're going to be pretty good. How would you like to think that from 3 years' time from now, you would be a master caricaturist? You want to do it faster than that? Okay, we'll do more than one a day. But just start with a commitment. Here's the white pen that I used. I wasn't all that satisfied with it. It's okay. But I'm competent with brushwork, so I think dipping my brush tip into opaque gouache, I would have succeeded and got more white onto the subject and enjoyed it more. But these pens are very convenient, and they're what is used mostly, I think, in the trade. But I like my gouache. Experiment and find out what you like, and make sure you enjoy it. So your tools that you need, your imagination, some confidence, even if you fake it to start with. Yeah, you can fake the confidence. Just don't try to paint to please other people. Try to paint to learn, to have fun, and you'll be surprised how many of those things that you just do for the sheer fun of it will fall into place if you lower your expectations and don't sort of try for perfection. Perfection is an absolute killer of creativity. Learning to do caricature is going to help you with developing a positive attitude that can be beneficial in all aspects of life. And of course, the skills of having that positive attitude allows you to make fun of things that you see and develop them into caricature instead of stressing over painful events or the troubles in the world. If you can sort of make some light-hearted fun of it, show the humour to things, it's going to help you deal with them and help other people deal with them. So it is a wonderful skill. Now, some people suggest that you start caricature or training by doing doodles. Well, I suggest that you actually look at the type of subjects that you want to paint and look for the simplest shape in them. Like, look at this puppy's head and think about the top head. It's a pear shape. You know the shape of a pear. So rather than sort of thinking, oh, I don't know how to draw a dog's head, think of the fat pear and draw a fat pear. Now, what is the shape of the eyes? You've got an oval there, so put in a couple of ovals. Even the nose, you could almost imagine drawing a little figure of 8 for that nose. You know how to draw an 8, so pop that in. What shape is the ear? Well, the lower part is almost a triangle. You could pop a little triangle in, like a little arrowhead. Think of the shapes that you do know and try doing those shapes. Now, my writing here, it's not brilliant, but it's good enough that I can start doing public displays of my writing. Now, my writing was shocking a year ago. This is after a year of practicing, and I intend to do more practice. When I started, I was doing a page of writing practice every day, and now I rarely do it, and I must get back to it. If I'm going to be caricaturing every day and I want to add writing, perfect friends, I like that for this little illustration. It's not quite finished yet, but I'll come back to it. And this little one here, I love this one as well. The fun of it. Now, exaggerate that mouth shape. I'm going to turn the mouth into a deeper smile, so it's a little exaggeration. I'm going to make the nose a little bit bigger. Again, the wiggly line, not a straight line. You're looking at ways of taking what is real and exaggerating to put humour in it. See, I have this on a wiggly board, so my paper is actually moving, trying to encourage me to not be perfect, trying to encourage myself to caricature. So whatever is going to help you. As I said, I thought the wobbly board might help me. Little things that I want to exaggerate, those little white teeth, I love those, the little sharp razor teeth of a puppy. And as I said, I want to put a big, deep smile into that mouth, which isn't there in reality, but being caricature, you use your imagination. Now, something I notice that a lot of people do with eyes is they either exaggerate the eyes and make them larger or make them smaller. Well, as I said, I'm still actually learning to find my style, what I'm wanting to do. So I've left the eyes fairly much their normal size for the moment, and I'm going to gradually decide how I want my caricatures to go. The last thing I want to do is to be looking at other people's caricatures that I admire and copying their style. Find your own style, find your own way with caricature. Initially just practice and practice. As I said, these are just little 15-minute sketches and I'm having a wonderful time doing them. And this is my first one of this dog series. So as I said, if I get myself an A5 book and I do a caricature every day or several, by the end of the time I have that book filled, I should be far more proficient and know how I want to proceed. Do I want the eyes to be realist? Do I want them larger or smaller? I will find out what it is that I want. I don't have to know right now, today. I just know that I want to have wigglier lines to break this as different from my real fine art paintings. I don't want continual lines. I want to hit and miss. I want to use imagination. I want to deepen the smiles of these doggies. They've got to be fun. We don't want sad looking dogs in our caricatures. There we go. Increase that line. Make it a deeper smile. We all know the dog's lips don't go up there, but everybody recognises that deep curve as being a laughter. So these are things that you can do to help it become caricature. Find out what it is, the lines that you want. Again, if you're not skilled at drawing, look at that shape. What is the shapes? Can you see shapes that you know how to do? You could draw a big circle for the face, and then a smaller circle down for the nostril area, and then rub out the dividing lines between, and you form the shape of a puppy's face. So simplify shapes and do a lot of quick drawing, looking at subjects and quick drawing, and this will help you build up the skill. If you want that tail to be wagging, then what you want to do is to draw that tail again, but this time with a broken line, and then draw it again, but even more broken lines, and now you're suggesting a wagging tail. If you'd drawn the tail with solid lines, you couldn't convey that wagging tail. They're using a lot of imagination, a lot of experience gained from quick drawing, and practice. Practice that's worth doing is, instead of trying to spend the time you allocate in doing one good caricature, what about filling a page with lots of fast, semi-finished caricatures? Look at something that's moving. It could be a child at play or your puppy or cat, and just do as many speed paintings as you can, speed drawings as you can. Lots and lots of little ones. And then choose the one that you like best to develop. but the more you can try these drawings out, the better you're going to get, the easier it's going to become, and the more you'll become confident. You could try drawing a page just of a puppy's smile. How are you going to differentiate your caricature from your fine artwork if you're studying both or working in both as I am? Well, I signed my fine art run, and I've decided as Tessa, my little cavoodle, is going to be the inspiration for most of my caricatures, I will be signing this T and R, and I think that's just fine for caricature. These, as I said, will make wonderful birthday cards or greeting cards. So learning to master a bit of writing, and of course if you're not skillful at writing, you can always use your computer to generate writing, but it's good to learn to write. It doesn't have to be fancy calligraphy. It just gives you that extra freedom, that extra touch. And again, don't feel it has to be perfect, especially for caricature. A little bit asymmetry, a little irregular line is all part. Now, teaching caricature or any subject is a two-way street. I need to hear back from you. Communicate with me in the community pages or even via the comment section in one of my blogs. The community pages is ideal. You can even put up illustrations of what you're doing. I need to hear from you, find out what it is that you're wanting to learn, any questions you have. I can best reply to your questions in the next videos if I know what they are, and that's how I can best help you as a student. And of course, sometimes I can do private critiques and tutoring, but that's an extra level. For basically, if you can do it in public, that benefits everybody. If you can put it into the public community page and Patreon, then I can help you in the next video, and that helps everybody because there'll be other people will have the same questions you've got. Again, it's imagination and not being fixed on trying to copy. You're not trying to do a fine art copy of the subject, so the colours of the subject can be exaggerated. They don't have to be exactly like the object that you're using as your reference. If you can get a pattern of light and shade similar, if you can get the outlines similar, you're going to have something that's recognisable as the subject that you are referencing. You do not have to paint the dogs in the same colour. It's much better to have a lot of white space. Light is best shown as just the blank paper. So heaps and heaps of white space where you can have it. Contrast of light and shade. Putting dark down against light on your most important focal point. You want these dogs' noses to be one of the most important focal points, and you make sure that it's dark against light. You have contrast. Where you've got a least important focal point, you don't have sharp contrasts. If I want a dog's paw to show out against the body of another dog, regardless of what the colour of that paw and the colour of the body of the dog was, it's better that I have one paw light and the body dark so that it's visible. This tongue, you could put that in as bright pink or bright blue or orange. It's irrelevant, but you could make it stand out as a focal point if you want to feature a tongues out dog. I've used a more natural colouring here, the Venetian red. As I said, I'm feeling my way. I'm not experienced in caricature. When I say that, I have done it for a long time, but it's not been the major thing for me. I have not been doing a caricature a day for years, the kind of proficiency level that I'd want to have before I'd say I was an experienced caricaturist. I'm doing it enough that I feel I can share with you what I've learned and what I am learning. Now, I'm just going to increase this information in this little heading to turn it into something that's fun and meaningful for me. Now, with all my works, I go away, I have a break, I come back and look at it and say, what does it need? And I thought that this should have a lot more fun in it. So let's splash around and have these dogs rolling in a bit of mud. Does this look happier? I think these puppies are having more fun now. I think this will be a lovely card to give my husband from Tessa and me. Happiness is being with you. Let your caricature bring joy to you and to others.